Hey everybody, welcome to episode 4 of Cougar Dash. I'm Cody Schoeler here with my co-host Ryan Root. And I know, Ryan, you wanted to say something right off the bat before we get into our first topic, so I'll let you do that real quick.
Yeah, first and foremost, we didn't get to talk about it last week, but we heard about the passing of legendary Coug broadcaster Bob Robertson, and we definitely just wanted to say, rest in peace to such a legendary, college football Hall of Fame broadcaster. And I mean, he was a diehard Coug fan for 50 plus years, and the utmost respect to him and his legacy. We just say rest in peace to Bob Robertson first and foremost.
Yes, absolutely. And so now getting into our first topic, something that's very near and dear to Cougar fans' hearts, something that we love to talk about, Max Borghi. Electric player, great player on the field. And I want to ask you, Ryan, is Max Borghi the best running back in the Pac-12?
Well, I'll give you an extended answer. I'll say yes, and he has been. So over 800 yards rushing last season, which obviously didn't top the pack with Zach Moss and whatnot, offensive player of the year for the Pac-12 last year. Pac-12 last year. So, 800 yards rushing is not the top in the conference, but the 600 yards receiving is the one that I pay most attention to, especially at that running back position, because none of the top running backs last year even came close to Borghi's receiving stats. And to have a dual threat running back like Borghi is just unmatched in the Pac-12.
Yeah, there's no denying what Max Borghi has done on the field and can do going forward. My only issue is he the most talented running back? Yes, that might be the case. But if you're asking me, am I picking who's gonna be the best running back when the Pac-12 steps on the field? Who's gonna have the best statistical season? I'm probably gonna go with the field just based off how variable that position can be. You look at some of the guys coming back. Yeah, a lot of the top rushers are gone, but CJ Verdell is still there. He finished second in the Pac-12 in rushing behind Zach Moss. You've got guys like Jamar Jefferson, who had a great freshman year and is on an Oregon State team that's not the best, but he can just take tons of carries. Christopher Brown from Cal, Alex Fontenot from Colorado, Richard Newton from, unfortunately, UW, Stephen Carr from USC. Like, these are all guys with very good talent, and any one of them can lead the Pac-12 in rushing. Max Borghi might have the best talent, but that doesn't mean he's going to have the best season. So I think that is kind of where this comes into play. That is he the best running back in the Pac-12? I don't know, because he might not have the best numbers when the season's all said and done.
Well, I'll bring it back to Zach Moss, because I'm sure we both agree that he was probably the best running back performance-wise last season.
Oh, yeah,
absolutely. The 1,400 yards rushing. So
he killed it.
If we bring it back to Zach Moss and compare him with Max Borghi, Max Borghi had 16 total touchdowns last season compared to 17 for Zach Moss. So just one less than the best performing running back in the Pac-12 last year. And to think he couldn't even get a rushing touchdown in that Pac-12 championship game. But that's besides the point. Most draft profiles you saw on Zach Moss back in the day, or a couple months ago, they said he was a day 2 guy, 5th, 6th rounder. He ended up going in the third to Buffalo. He ended up getting a touchdown yesterday. Shout out to him. But a day 2 guy across the board for draft profiles, and a lot of his pro comparisons, from what I saw at least, the best comparison I saw attached to his name was Kareem Hunt, which Kareem Hunt's is a great running back, and I'd love to be compared to Kareem Hunt any day of the week. But what do Wazoo fans compare Borghi to every day of the week? Christian McCaffrey, top running back in the NFL, Stanford guy, even a Pac-12 guy at that. Borghi was going to go to Stanford before he came to WSU. He has all the DNA of Christian McCaffrey behind him. And, I'd rather have Christian McCaffrey than Kareem Hunt. Let's just say that.
Yeah, I've kind of got a lot of problems with that comparison. Like, I think the main reason why he gets compared to Christian McCaffrey is because he's kind of from the same area, and because he's just a white running back that catches the ball and does what he does. But
he
Christian
catches the ball pretty well, Cody.
Yeah, but Christian McCaffrey's the best running back in the NFL. Like, that's like comparing any college quarterback to Patrick Mahomes. Like, Max Borghi's great, but Max Borghi isn't Christian McCaffrey. There's plenty of other running backs with similar profiles that are a little more realistic for a Max Borghi. Like I think Christian McCaffrey is just selling it a little too high. I think that the very intriguing comparisons are there, but I mean, Christian McCaffrey was breaking Barry Sanders' single season total yardage records in college. Like Max Borghi is great, but let's pump the brakes before we say that he's a top 3 Heisman finalist and borderline Heisman winner. Like I don't know if I really agree with that. I think he's great, but I think if he had a different physical profile, we wouldn't be saying Christian McCaffrey.
Well, Heisman winner is a bit of a different conversation with Borghi, but if we're just talking about total yards, like you're bringing up, Christian McCaffrey's numbers compared to Barry Sanders, Borghi nearly doubled his yards from scrimmage last season alone, and that was on more pass attempts from the air raid Mike Leach offense. Now with the new offense, with the run and shoot incorporating more of the run attack for Borghi, I mean, you're going to see more stats from Borghi just based off of the improvement he made from year 1 to year 2 in nearly every statistical category. I'd say it goes far past just the background and the appearance of Borghi to compare to Christian McCaffrey. I mean, the stats back it up with how he is on the preseason list for the best receiver in the nation and the best running back in the nation. I mean, how many running backs do you know that end up on both lists?
Yeah, I think that's really impressive. But one of the things I kind of want to do is looking at Borghi's stats and kind of 6.4 yards per carry. That did lead the conference last year. Like it was impressive. He had far less carries than a lot of people that were also in the top 10 where he finished. But I went through. I kind of looked at how many carries Nick Rolovich, because there is a new coach. We don't know. Like he's not going to be used the same. Nick Rolovich used his running backs. And if Max Borghi got the same amount of carries as Nick Rolovich's top rushers averaged over his 4 years in Hawaii, I think it was somewhere in the 1,100 yard range, which is really good. It would have been third last year. So I'm not saying that's a knock against him, but I'm just saying, it's not like we think, oh, he's going to get so many more carries, he's going to rush for 2,000 yards. Like that's not the case. He's 1,100, 1,200 yards, and he's lost 2 offensive linemen. Fred Malagoa in the middle, that's a big loss for them. The most experienced guy on that line, Rob Valencia, at right guard. Sure, there's still some guys back, but if you're starting freshmen and inexperienced guys there in those 2 positions, like he might not be running behind the same line. And another thing is Rolovich does typically, in his 4 years, did not like to throw the ball to his running backs. Now, he didn't have a running back like Max Borghi. He may, kind of tool his system around that, but the run and shoot is the run and shoot. Like it's not the run and dump down like we've seen in the air raid. His running backs over 4 years all combined had about 80 receptions. Max Borghi got that in 1 year. So his rushing yards might go up, but his receiving yards might go down. And if that's his big claim to fame, then, what are we going to be saying about him when, he only gets, 45 receptions? Oh, Ryan, are you there? Okay. So, if we're going to look at the Cougars again, a big thing with Max Borghi is, he really got a lot of the work in that backfield. When he started out, James Williams was here. So
what I'll say to that
there you go.
is it's not a secret that Borghi's established himself as a.
All right. Okay. We're having some technical difficulties. So I'm just going to go solo for a few minutes. But like I was saying, Deion McIntosh is a guy here in WSU that came on pretty strong at the end of the year, having a few great games, including that Oregon State game. So, Nick Rolovich, likes to use his main running back, but I think he's going to lean on multiple guys a lot more than Mike Leach did. Mike Leach was a big proponent of just going with one guy and giving him all the work, which Max Borghi kind of forced his hand when James Williams was also here. So, I don't know if Max Borghi is going to get all the work. Deion McIntosh was a guy at Notre Dame. Yeah, they are. Okay.
All right. Gotta love that WSU Wi-Fi, Cody. All right.
Exactly. Do you have any final remarks on Max Borghi that we may or may not have heard while you're experiencing those?
It's just to the fact that we've established that he's a good receiving running back. There's no argue against that. Bringing it back to his rushing ability, I think that's where this new offense is really going to shine with his talents. I mean, if he can get 1,000-yard rushing season, then yeah, he's a guaranteed first round selection. We've already established his receiving talents, but if he establishes 1,000-yard rushing season, then I mean, it just goes from there with how great of a running back that he is.
Yeah, for sure. And, I want to see Max Borghi be great despite maybe what I'm arguing a little bit. I think he is great. I want to see him go out there and just kill it on the field. And speaking of that, we're close to we're 12 days away from when the conference only Pac-12 season was supposed to start. We all know, unfortunately, that's not happening as planned. But I want to take a look at that season and kind of figure out where WCU would have ended up, how they would have done. And my big question is, do you think they would have been better or worse than 500? Was this team going to have a winning or losing record in 2020, Ryan? What are your thoughts on that?
I'm going to take the above on this one, and that might be in the minority vote, but I'm going to take the above. And honestly, I'm going to just account it back to just personal history. Like, I remember back in 2018, we just came off the Luke Falk season, went 9-4 with a bowl game loss. I mean, at one point we were 8th in the country. And I remember coming into that next season, we weren't ranked at all on any AP poll. We had some guy come in with a mustache, the man, the myth, the legend, Gardner Minshew, coming to lead the way. I'll be honest, I was skeptical at the beginning of the season. We ended up having the most winning season in WSU history and a bowl game win for the first time since 2015. And we kind of missed the 500 mark with Gordon last year, if we're including the bowl game. And that was Leach's last season. Now with a new coach, new head coach, new quarterback, an offense more organized for the running back, for our star running back to shine. I mean, I understand how that can paint for disaster for some people, but I mean, I just have a feeling that us not being ranked and us being underappreciated before the season, I think we're going to surprise some people.
Yeah, first I just want to say, if you guys are listening in on whatever platform, feel free to drop your question in the chat. We have our topics, we have what we're talking about, but really we want to talk about what you guys, want to hear us talk about. So if you have a question, whether it be related to our topic or not, please make it related to, WSU or Pac-12 football. Drop that in the chat. We'd love to hear your thoughts. But going back to this WSU team in 2020, I'm the pessimist today. I'm going to take the under. First off, there's no Gardner Minshew coming in here to save this team and lead them to the Alamo Bowl. I think we saw the base level of this team last year, 6-6, or 6-7 when you count in the bowl game. And really, I think this team might be worse. They've lost quite a bit. They don't really have outside receivers right now. Some problems in the secondary. And when I go through and I look at this season, honestly, I come out to about 5-5, but I give them the one loss that they probably shouldn't have, because as Cougar fans, we've come to expect that they always drop a game that they are supposed to win. And especially looking at this season, they start off against Utah and against Oregon, probably the two best teams, absolutely the two best teams in this conference. That's going to be tough, especially for a new quarterback, I think, and a new head coach. That is not easy. We're not starting off against Colorado and Oregon State. I think that makes a huge difference. And there's no non-conference schedule this year to get ready. A lot of times that's kind of used like a preseason to figure out what you've got, see some guys on the field. They don't have that. They're going back-to-back weeks 1 and 2 against the two teams that played in the Pac-12 championship game last year. I think that's going to be tough. I think that those are two losses, and I think that that could really make it hard going forward on this team, having to rebound from those losses against week 3 is a UCLA team that there's probably going to be a little bit of PTSD from what happened last year. I just think this is tough. And I think in this weird year where Rolovich is having an unusual offseason, this new quarterback hasn't even been able to step on the practice field yet. I just don't think the Cougars are going to be able to pull out anything better than 500 this year.
Well, we'll take into account the 10 teams that they were supposed to face. I mean, you have the. Am I still connected?
Yeah, you're sounding a little funny there, Ryan. I think we're gonna have to figure that out. But I'm going to talk and argue against myself for a second here. Like I mentioned, WSU always drops a game they're supposed to lose. They usually, they also win a game they're not supposed to. So, there's some games on the schedule that look like losses, when you're projecting them, but they could very easily, be a win. A USC or an Arizona State. These are some close games that they could pull out. On the side that people aren't expecting, and they could squeak out a 5-5 or even a 6-4. I argued your point a little bit there, Ryan. I'll let you jump in and take control of that again, and I'll go back to arguing on the opposite.
Yeah, I'll keep it quick. So, I take into account five teams that are kind of up for grabs: Colorado, Stanford, Cal, UCLA, and even Arizona. Or sorry, not Arizona.
Arizona State.
Arizona State. Yeah, I think all of those are. I think we have the best chance to win those games. And if we take into account those being all wins, that's 5 wins right out the gate. That's 500. Then we
Mm-hmm.
take into account Utah, which I honestly think is a coin flip with Utah coming to Pullman. They don't have that same defense that they had last year. They don't have Zach Moss. I think that's a bit of a coin flip. And then there's some other teams that are probably going to be some losses, like the Oregon game you brought up. We always like to upset one of the big time teams, especially Oregon with the Mike Leach era. But I think that you're right in saying that we drop a lot of those easy games typically, but when it comes to this season, I mean, we may not have a preseason or that much of practice, but the other schools are facing the same problems, and the other schools have holes that they need to fill, especially for that Utah team, and Oregon, losing Penny Sewell,
Mm-hmm.
needing a new quarterback. Everybody's got holes to fix. I think ours are, just on par with everybody else in the problems that they needed to fix from this last offseason.
See, that's where I would disagree wholeheartedly because WSU has a new coach. Continuity is going to be huge this year for teams that are bringing back starting quarterbacks and offensive lines and a lot of returning starters. But also just bringing back the same head coach and the same coaching staff is a huge leg up this year. WSU and Utah may look like a coin toss in terms of on-field talent. I don't even necessarily agree with that, but it's not a coin toss in terms of coaching. I love Nick Rolovich. I think Nick Rolovich can have a great coaching career in Pullman, but I feel bad that he's got to handle his first season like this, having to do meetings over Zoom and not even being able to get on the fields, So I think it's going to take him a few games to really get into the groove. Usually that's where your games against Idaho's and Houston's come in, but this year you're coming out the gate hot. Utah, Oregon, like that's going to be tough. A new quarterback that's playing for the first time, that's going to be tough. Like Utah may not have the same players, but they still have the same system. Next man up. Utah is going to have a good defense, and so whoever gets thrown into the fire is really getting thrown into the fire, and it's going to experience it. It's going to experience some struggles.
I mean, what did Rocky used to say? Doesn't matter how hard you're hit, it's how hard you get hit and get back up. I think WSU can get back up from facing two of the best teams in the Pac-12 and getting ready to face, some of the more subpar teams. Are we going to face some PTSD with that UCLA team? Perhaps, but it's going to be on the road at UCLA, and Lord knows they're not going to pack their 70,000 person stadium with fans. So, I think it's going to be a more positive outlook on the season that you think it might be.
I would love for that to happen. Obviously, I want WSU to go 10-0, win the Pac-12, and take home a national championship. Unfortunately, I don't think that's going to happen. I would love for that to happen, but realistically, I think we're looking at at a 5-5 season at best. I think they drop a game that they're supposed to win. Whether it's a Colorado game right after the Apple Cup, which I don't want to talk about. Whether it's a Stanford game. I think that they're just they're gonna drop something they're not supposed to. They're gonna end up 4-6, and Mike Leach started out not doing too good in his first couple of years, so that does not mean that the future isn't bright in Pullman. But one thing that Pullman will have, regardless of what team is there, is Martin Stadium, which is criminally underrated. I'm disappointed and embarrassed for this Dash Sports ranking of Pac-12 stadiums, because they have made an atrocity, just a horrendous decision in putting Martin Stadium at number 11. Anybody who's been there knows that it's not 11. Now, I'm not saying it's number 1. I'm not gonna do that, but it's not number 11.
I think we can agree on that.
Yes, I think so. Ryan, I want to know, do you know where you would put it? Not necessarily a full ranking, but accurately, where do you think it goes? Because 11 is just, that's terrible.
Yeah, I would probably put it middle of the road. I'm saying 6 or higher, and that's me being nice. If we're gonna rank this off of total attendance and the amount of people that you can put in the seats, then of course, mathematically, we're not going to be there. But if we're going to talk about the stadiums, there's more than just putting butts in the seats. It's more about the atmosphere in the games, which,
absolutely,
let's be honest, with some of those LA schools that can't pack a 90,000, 70,000 person stadium, because we all know how your football program has been going these past 5 years. Because in the past 5 years, sure, we've had the lowest average attendance. That's because, we can only fit 33,000 people about. And the attendance percentage, on the other hand, is over 90%, something that ranks 4th in the Pac-12, which, I don't know if you knew this, but you know that Utah and Oregon fit over 100% of their capacity on average?
Yeah, that's called...
So they're creating seats.
It's called standing room only.
Yeah, that's, hats off to them. They're exempt from this conversation, but we can bring up these California teams, because I'm sorry that we don't live in LA. Okay, I'm sorry that we don't live in the San Jose area with Stanford. Okay, I'm sorry that Pullman only has a 30,000 person population. Okay, but the fact that we can fit 90% of our stadium on average every game is, how can you put Martin Stadium at 11 when our fans actually care to go to the game in the first place? I mean, Cal was the one that's ranked at 10 this week, right, on Twitter, and
terrible.
They have one of the lowest attendance percentage, if not the lowest attendance percentage, in the Pac-12 in the past 5 years.
Yeah,
and they're still going to be ahead of us.
Yeah, and I think our chat has answered one of our questions. How do people put Martin at 11? It's called they've never been to Martin. If you go to Martin Stadium,
plain and simple,
you watch a game in Martin Stadium, it's not 11. Ask Justin Herbert, all you Oregon fans that might think Oregon's out there, ask Justin Herbert about the atmosphere in Martin Stadium, because he looked rattled when that place was rocking. And yeah, going on your point, WSU doesn't have the chance to pack 90,000 people into their stadium. But what they do, they fill it up. They put 92% of that stadium, they make it full. And I went through and kind of looked at really what that means, because a knock I always hear.
Oh, I think I might have lost my co-host now. So, going off of what Cody is saying about Martin, there's 30,000 people in Pullman. Okay, that is far away from any other town in the Pac-12 except for Stanford. Their population's a little lesser than ours, but they're 30 minutes away from San Jose, which has 1 million people there. So we could disregard Stanford as well. The rest of the 11 teams do not have nearly as good of nearly as low of a population as Pullman does. 90% of our stadium is filled every game. We have a total enrollment of about 20,000 students. Okay, we have a total enrollment of 20,000 Cougs in the Pullman area. Now, I would say, and Cody, you can chime in on here because it looks like you're back. I would say I would say the student section in Martin is roughly about a third of the stadium. Would you
Yeah, I
agree
think
with that?
that's about accurate. It takes up, a
Okay.
handful of sections.
Right. So I would say that the student section is roughly about a third of Martin Stadium. So a third of Martin Stadium, around 10,000, right? And there's a 20,000 student population in Pullman. So you're telling me
Mhm.
half of our students are coming to the games on average? I know half the students aren't going to a UCLA game. Half the
Mhm.
students aren't going to a Colorado game. And you can prove me wrong, but again, we can bring back the success that you guys have had in the past 5 years. And with us finally getting college game day in town after so long and having old Crimson fly every single college game day and finally
Mhm.
coming to Martin, what does that say about our community? Is that we care about our football team first and foremost.
Yeah, and what I was getting to before I was rudely interrupted by poor internet and Wi-Fi connection
I'm starting to think
is,
it's the other dashboards hosts, man. I think they're hacking us. I
yeah,
think they don't want us to prove
can
our
somebody
points.
go look and make sure we're not being hacked from Seattle right now? But you know, when WSU fills up that stadium, which they do pretty regularly, the fourth best capacity percentage in the Pac-12, um, that figure, that capacity of that stadium is 94% of Pullman's population. So for WSU to fill up that stadium, they need 94% of the people in Pullman to come to that game. And obviously, yes, people are traveling, but let's compare that to UCLA that ranks 11th in capacity percentage. They would just need 2.25% of the entire population of Los Angeles to come to their game to fill out that 90,000 seat Rose Bowl amazing stadium, but they don't do that. So what does that say? It can't be a great stadium if 2% of the population doesn't want to go to it. Martin Stadium, yeah, it's not the greatest.
No,
People go to Martin Stadium. Doesn't that say what it needs to say? Cal cannot be better. Cal football stadium cannot be better than Martin Stadium if people don't go to the game. Like I'm not going to a stadium that sucks, and neither are the Cal fans because they're not showing up to that stadium. People show up to Martin Stadium, and the atmosphere is great. It's loud. At the Cal game last year, there was more WSU fans than Cal fans. People don't even go to Cal games. So how is that stadium better? I don't care if the band ran on the field 50 years ago. I don't care because there's not even enough fans in the stand to run on the field now if they were to get a win. Like I'm just disappointed that just happened because WSU, I mean, if people come to Martin Stadium, they'll know that this is not some just like crappy podunk like little Pullman stadium. Like this, it's good football being played, and it's a good football atmosphere.
the fact that the stadium is incorporated into the campus as well is something that I don't think a lot of these Pac-12 teams can say. Okay, I know that the Coliseum is not on the USC campus. Okay, and they just because they hosted a professional team and an Olympics one year. I'm sorry, does not get to prove that you're a better stadium just because you have one of the most populous cities in the world. Okay, if you want to see a garbage stadium, and this might be what you guys are picturing, and this may help some of you outside Pullman viewers. If you guys want to see a garbage stadium, you can travel about 15 minutes west of Pullman and go see the Kibby Dome, and you can tell us if we have anywhere close to a stadium like the
Mm-hmm.
Kibby Dome. I went to a basketball game in the Kibby Dome, and I felt like I was watching Hoop Fest in a convention center. Okay, it is garbage. But you go to Martin Stadium, recently renovated, incorporated with the campus. It's basically attached to the whole athletic wing of campus. I mean, you get to walk through the stadium on your way to class. How many stadiums can say that? I can walk next to Martin on my way to my comm class, my English class, my
Mm-hmm.
business class. I can witness the atmosphere of a WSU football game on my way to class. Do you think the Coliseum's going to let you get anywhere close to it if you're trying to go to your business class? No, because I'm sorry, but they got an NFL game to take care of this weekend.
Yeah, and I think maybe some other schools should start incorporating that because then students will actually go to the stadium. They'll actually get to see it, because I don't think Cal fans could even tell you what Memorial Stadium looked like. So that's all that we have for today. Thank you for tuning in to Cougar Dash. You can find our written content now at sportspac12.com, new partnership with them. Follow them on Twitter at sportspac12. You can also find links to that content on our website, dashsports.tv. Make sure to follow us on Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook at Dash Sports TV. And please subscribe, watch our YouTube channel. We put up clips. Subscribe to that YouTube channel, Dash Sports. Thanks for tuning in.